So my topic for this presentation is the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. This was put in place by Abraham Lincoln and Vice President Andrew Johnson at the time. So before the Civil War ended, efforts of Reconstruction were already being made, but nothing super major. So Abraham Lincoln and Vice President Andrew Johnson made many attempts to unify the North and the South and were pretty much unsuccessful. The North was just dead set on abolishing all forms of slavery, and the South just was not wanting to comply with that. So Abraham Lincoln tried his very best to leave the topic of slavery out of his speeches, but it had to come up because it was the main driving issue between the North and the South at the time. The Emancipation Proclamation was the first major step to freeing slaves and taking over the South from the North side, but it was just a declaration. It didn't really stop slavery, at least not at first. That allowed black men to enlist in the army, and it shifted the war to a more moral debate instead of just North versus South. Now there was heart in the North side, because it was life or death for them, basically. This brings us to the first major Reconstruction plan, the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. It was promised in that restoration of all rights of property except as to slaves. I got that from whitehousehistory.org. This proclamation was part of Lincoln's 10% plan, giving property and land back to the Confederacy along with the right to rejoin the Union and Congress seats. So as long as 10% of the Confederate voters swore an oath of allegiance to the Constitution, basically they got their land, they got restoration of all rights and property, they just didn't get their slaves back. The Republicans tried to make this a 50% of all Confederates had to pledge an oath, but this was shot down when Abraham Lincoln used his veto, because he knew that was not going to pass. It is stated in the Constitution that the president, quote, shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. I got this quote from freedman.umd.edu, and that's what Abraham Lincoln did. He used his power of veto to shoot down the Republicans' agenda that they were trying to push. After Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson became president, and his motives for abolishing slavery were a lot different than Abraham Lincoln's. It wasn't because he believed that slaves and African Americans should have the same rights as the whites. He did it because he hated the Confederacy, because he grew up poor and he could not stand that the slaves were adding to the wealth of the Confederacy. So after, he didn't care much about the welfare of the freed Africans, he just wanted to make sure the Confederacy suffered. Johnson stated, quote, there is no such thing as Reconstruction. These states have not gone out of the Union, therefore Reconstruction is unnecessary. I do not mean to treat them as inchoate states, but merely as existing under a temporary suspension of their government, provided always they elect loyal men, unquote. So he didn't think that the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction was truly a Reconstruction plan, because he didn't believe that they ever left, really. He just thought they were just basically in a timeout, according to him. That's my video on the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. Thanks.